Well, hello, it's me, Mrs Blackwell, and Mr Matthews is here too. It's January and I'm going to tell you about the books that I read. Starting with Dolly Alderton's Good Material, I read this for Featherston Book Club. Our theme for January was beach read, which I took to mean something light and easygoing. It is the story of it's the anatomy of a breakup in your 30s, and it's told from the perspective of Andy, who is a only moderately successful comedian, and his breakup story. I actually really enjoyed this. Some people who've been watching these videos for a while will think this doesn't seem like a very Mrs Blackwell's choice, but I'm glad that I misunderstood the theme for January and ended up reading this Dolly Alderton story. The actual theme for January was beach read, meaning that it had to include a beach. So John Boyne's little novella saved me. This is the story of Willow, a middle-aged wife from Ireland. She has taken herself off to a little island in the Atlantic to grapple with something terrible that her husband has done. It's not a spoiler to tell you that he has abused young women at a swimming academy that he runs, and Willow is working through what she knew and what she chose to brush under the carpet. This is part of a series of 4 books called the Elements series, and I enjoyed water so much that I immediately went on to Earth, the next book in the series. This is the story of Ethan. He is a young man on the island where Willow goes in water, and we've moved a few years forward and he's gone on to be a rising football star. He and one of his fellow players are accused of assaulting a woman at a party, and this story centres around the trial from that. The third book in the series, which I just had to read because it's available, Fire. This is a story of Freya. She is a surgeon and she is one of the jurors in Earth. So that's the kind of threads that we have through the book. Each one moves on quite a few years, but by the time we get to the end of Fire, a key character from Water re-emerges. So I'm very interested to see what's going to happen in Air that comes out later this year, and I have a feeling that's going to tie all these stories together. Next I read The Coin by Yasmin Zaher. This is a very quirky story of a rich Palestinian schoolteacher living in New York. She's totally obsessed with high-end designer fashion and cleanliness. She also starts a designer handbag reselling racket with a homeless man that she calls Trenchcoat throughout the story, but I found it really quirky and fun, and I would highly recommend this to anyone who enjoyed Miranda July's All Fours and has been looking for their next quirky read like that. Love Unedited by Caro Lewellyn. This is the story of an Australian woman who works in publicity. A famous unnamed author has come to Australia, they meet and fall in love. She moves to New York to continue the romance, and then partway through we find out that what we're actually reading is a manuscript of that romance, and a younger Australian editor has come across this book and she wants to get the story finished and get it published. This book is coming out in late February, and I'd kind of hoped it was going to be a little bit like Yellowface, quite a bit more gripping and quite a bit more scathing of the publishing industry, but it's really more of a classic love story. In the non-fiction, I read Satisfaction Guaranteed. This is the story of Zingerman's, a deli in Ann Arbor, Michigan. It's actually a whole empire. It's got coffee roastery and a venue space and restaurants, but this is the story of their rise from one single sandwich shop to being an empire. I'm reading this as part of Business Book Group with Wendy Batten, and what I really liked about this is that rather than being a sort of propaganda book from the company, this was written independently by a journalist, and she goes to places that companies might not otherwise go if they were writing a book themselves. And finally, I listened to this one on audiobook, but we have it in the shop, so I can hold it up. Madam by Antonia Murphy. She is an American woman who started an ethical brothel in Whangarei. This was a wonderful and very entertaining book. Antonia did a great job of narrating it herself, and I'm not going to get into the details because I know the details of an ethical brothel are going to be problematic for Instagram. It might get my video squashed, but if this story in general sounds interesting to you, I think you'll really enjoy the book. It's also been made recently into a movie with Rachel Griffiths. That's January. I will see you again quite soon, actually, in February.